And ABC News reports that some rifle scopes issued to our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan and used in training Iraqi and Afghan troops, these rifle scopes are imprinted with Bible verses. No, I'm not kidding. Here's one example, a scope being used by an Iraqi police officer which has JN 812 engraved on the sight, a reference to John chapter 8 verse 12, where Jesus is quoted as saying, "I am the light of the world, he who follows me shall not walk in darkness but have the light of life." The same company also makes rifle scopes that have 2 COR 4:6 printed on them, which references 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verse 6. For it is the God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. You see how both verses are about light? And their rifle sights, light. Very clever, right? And fantastically dangerous to the safety of Americans, and specifically American troops all over the world. Not to mention pretty spectacularly unconstitutional and a real thumb in the eye to U.S. military rules that prohibit the military proselytizing at all, particularly in Muslim countries we are fighting in. Those rules exist because the last thing in the world we want to do is hand Al-Qaeda and its recruiters and its sympathizers citable evidence for their eternal claim that our military is fighting a Christian religious war against Muslims, which all Muslims therefore have a duty to join against us. The company who makes these scopes is called Trijicon. It's based in Michigan. They have a $660 million contract to make gun sights for the military, and they apparently plan to keep on keeping on with printing Bible verses on these scopes right next to the model number. The company admitted to ABC News that it is printing Bible verses on them. It's not inadvertent, it's on purpose. They then said that any complaints raised about this were obviously from those who were, and I quote, not Christian. Or not interested in recruiting for Al-Qaeda. You self-centered, self-righteous, endangering the troops idiots. Congratulations, you've just spawned 1,000 anti-American propaganda videos. Hope you're enjoying your war profits.
During his first overseas tour as president to the Muslim country of Turkey, that Barack Obama said the United States is not and will never be at war with Islam. Which is why our next story is provoking so much controversy. It concerns inscriptions that refer to biblical texts on weapons being deployed by American forces. Here's our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross. Brian?
Martin, to prevent the suspicion, the United States is conducting a Christian crusade against Muslims. Members of the U.S. military in Iraq and Afghanistan are strictly prohibited from proselytizing, promoting any religion, faith, or practice. It's called General Order Number 1. But apparently, one of the Pentagon's big suppliers never got the memo.
Some soldiers call them Jesus rifles. That's because the sights on their guns, including this one used to train soldiers in Iraq, contain a secret coded reference to New Testament passages about Jesus Christ. Here, JN 812, a reference to the book of John, chapter 8, verse 12, which reads in part, "Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world."
They know it's wrong, and it's not just wrong, it's an outrage.
Michael Weinstein runs the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, which claims thousands of members in the U.S. military who he says are endangered by the secret Bible codes.
It is a big deal. We've had many soldiers reach out to us. Some are oblivious, but many others, and the thousands are well aware that it's there. They've described it as a sick and a very scary joke, and that it allows the Mujahideen, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, the insurrectionists, and jihadists to be claiming that they're being shot by Jesus rifles.
Other sites have references to the New Testament books of Matthew, Revelation, and Corinthians, such as this scope used by Special Forces, encoded with another reference to a verse about the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. The rifle sights are produced by the Trijicon Company of Wixom, Michigan, which has almost $1 billion in Pentagon contracts. A company spokesman says its founder, Glenn Bindon, a devout Christian, began the practice years ago, and it has continued since Bindon's death in 2003. The Trijicon spokesman said there was nothing wrong or illegal about adding the biblical references to the military sites.
Well, that's fine, but I find something wrong with it, and I think our government should find something wrong with it.
Retired Major General William Nash commanded the 1st Brigade of the 3rd Armored Division during Desert Storm in Iraq. He is now an ABC News consultant.
There's a lot of organizations that provide Bibles to soldiers and Torah and and even copies of the Quran are given out to our soldiers. I have no problem with that, but I do have problems with military equipment being labeled in such a way that it seems like it's our God against their God.
General Nash says the Pentagon should make the company remove the biblical codes.
They should fix them all. They do a modification on the sites to take off those inscriptions, and if they fail to do that, they should be penalized monetarily.
At the Pentagon, the Army and the Marines told ABC News they were unaware of the biblical codes until we contacted them.
One of the really cool things that I like about this site.
But on gun enthusiast and military websites, the presence of the New Testament references seem well known. As this gun reviewer pointed out, the passage from the book of John.
I love it. I love it. Yes, Trijicon, those guys are Christians. And, you know, they're just, and all of their different sites, they have verses on there. So just a little neat side note. And for those of you who aren't Christians, well, you know, whatever, get over it. All right. So anyway.
We received information just very recently from one of our clients indicating that the rifle was referred to as the spiritually transformed firearm of Jesus Christ.
Even with the general order against religious proselytizing, the biblical references on the rifle sites is only the latest example of a clash in the U.S. military over Christian symbols and preaching in Iraq and Afghanistan. 2 years ago in Afghanistan, American documentary filmmaker Brian Hughes saw boxes of New Testament Bibles published in Afghan languages.
It was clear that those Bibles were there for the purpose of being distributed to the Afghan people, not to other soldiers, not to other people on the base, but to Afghan civilians. So it was clear that they were prepared to operate outside the boundaries of General Order No. 1.
Filmmaker Hughes recorded U.S. Army Chaplain Gary Hensley in a provocative sermon at Bagram Air Base.
You know, the Special Forces guys, they hunt men, basically. We do the same thing as Christians. We hunt people for Jesus. We do. We hunt them down. Get the hound of heaven after them. So we get them in the kingdom. Right? That's what we do. That's our business.
Now the tiny biblical codes on the U.S. military rifle sites, used by the Army and the Marines, as tiny as they are, seem certain to raise the issues again.
We're training the Iraqis and the Afghans, the members of the military, on these very same weapons. They're training on weapons with biblical references from the New Testament on there. It's unbelievable. This is how we're going to win friends.
It's not known precisely how many of the rifle sites with the secret Bible codes are now in use by the military. But the Trijicon company just received a $660 million contract to be the sole supplier to the U.S. Marine Corps, and its sites are the preferred choice of the U.S. Special Forces. As of tonight, the military was still trying to figure out what, if anything, it plans to do about them.